Hello, everyone. Welcome. All right, we'll wait just 5 more seconds here. All right, fantastic. Welcome to the job coaching webinar, the ins and outs. Thank you for tuning in with us today. We're really excited to have you guys here. So here are the panelists. First we have...
Hi, my name is Antonella Bashlia, and I'm an Implementation and Employment Specialist with CBI Consultants.
My name is Michael Antunes. I'm also an Employment Specialist at CBI.
And my name is Olivia McNeil, and I'm an Implementation and Employment Specialist at CBI Consultants. All right, here's our agenda for today. First, we'll do a brief introduction about CBI Consultants and who we are. Next, we'll move on to a job carving portion. Then we'll discuss job coaching, job accommodations, how to advocate for accommodations and for yourself. And then we'll speak to instructional supports, and then we'll end with a question and answer portion. So please feel free to leave all your questions until the end. You can put them in the chat and we'll answer them at our last session here at the Q&A. All right. First things first is our mission here at CBI Consultants. It is to improve the quality of life of people worldwide. We believe that all citizens have the right to fully inclusive lives and access to fulfilling work for real pay. To achieve our vision, we are committed to evidence-based best practices, excellence in all aspects of our operations, and a constant evaluation, improvement, and innovation. Who is CBI Consultants? So CBI Consultants have provided 30 years of positive behavior support in British Columbia, Canada. We are supporting more than 10,000 individuals with multiple barriers to achieve inclusive lives in home, school, and community environments. Our approach, the Lifestyle Development Process, LDP, has been published twice as a research exemplar of person-centered evidence-based best practice that is grounded on strength-based profiles, customized employment, systematic instruction, and positive behavior support. Right now, we're currently around a team of 40 passionate people supporting more than 500 people across the lifespan. Here's a quick snippet of part of our team. This is really showcasing how we've fully moved to remote work and using our telehealth platform. Since COVID was announced as a pandemic, we've exclusively worked online. Here's an example of a staff meeting we had with our customized employment department. As you can see, we're a fun bunch, and it really showcases how we're using online platforms to reach our individuals. We've been hosting online sessions, classes through Zoom, as well as team meetings, like I mentioned. All right, what does CBI do? So the first box I have here is Training and Technical Assistance Center. So we do training from general awareness to capacity building for schools, agencies, and organizations. We teach them how to best support individuals with disabilities. The next box we have here is consulting. So we do specialize in positive behavior support, PBS, also transition planning, individualized customized employment, which is what we'll be speaking to today in this webinar. We also develop peer relationships and social networks, as well as family lifestyle planning. The last box we have is research. We're really passionate about evidence-based best practices, as well as creating literature reviews, written briefs on specific issues, written manuals on how specific topics for the purpose of its in-service training. Here's a quick video about where we're located on the map. Zooming in from space, as you can see, we are located in Burnaby, BC, Canada, although we do support individuals across the globe and primarily in the Lower Mainland. There we are. All right, here's a brief history of our self-determination and customized employment process here at CBI. To date, CBI has placed about 300 individuals in real work for real pay positions. And right now we're currently redeveloping our self-determination curriculum to align more closely with BC's core competencies. And we are now in 56 schools throughout British Columbia. So the self-determination curriculum was born several years ago when we realized that although our customized employment program yielded a high success rate in terms of placements, individuals were not necessarily acquiring self-determination skills through the program. When employment came to an end, we would get a call asking if we could get another job lined up. We realized that it was important to focus on teaching skills related to job seeking beginning with the self-directed discovery so that we could really support more agency in the individual's lives. So the SD curriculum has gone through several iterations over the years, but it's always stayed true to its purpose, which is to be a resource for individuals and their support network in learning skills related to self-advocacy, self-awareness, goal setting, and problem solving. I will now pass it along to Michael, and he will describe to you guys the phases of customized employment. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Olivia. So yeah, we're just going to talk about the phases. We start with the discovery phase. With the job seeker, we learn about their strengths, skills, talents, and abilities. We support them to develop and recognize their ideal conditions of employment. We then move on to job development. CBI supports the job seeker to match their ideal conditions of employment with suitable jobs in the community. We meet with potential employers, discuss potential job duties, and support the job seeker in the interview process. Once they obtain a job, we move on to job coaching. We provide highly skilled job coaches to support the employer and employee to ensure success on the job. Our support continues as long as needed. We then move on to fading. With the employer's assistance, we will develop a transition plan to effectively fade support. CBI will still be involved as needed. Then there's monitoring. We will continue to monitor the employee's progress through surveys, calls, emails, and site visits for as long as necessary to ensure any changes or problems are addressed. And finally, we have crisis support. If a change in job duties, management, or any challenges occur, CBI is there to support the employee and employer. All right, so what exactly is job coaching? It is used when an individual does not fit into a normative position in a company. It is the creation of a new position based on an array of skills. The results are beneficial for both the business and the individual. And just to go into more detail, job carving is something that we at CBI have extensive experience with, and we've had numerous successes. If an individual we are supporting does not fit into a traditional role within a company, but has a number of skills that would be of true benefit to the business, we work together to identify the business needs and can create a new role for this person. For example, often job duties include tasks that other employees frequently don't have time to get to before the end of their shifts. Businesses often have numerous tasks like these. When identified, these job duties can be pieced together into a new role that may be an excellent fit for someone we are supporting and in turn greatly benefits the business. And now Olivia is just going to speak about one of our successes.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, if you guys were here last webinar, you would have met this individual. This is Stephen, and he's an amazing example of a successful job carve. So first we looked at the individual, Stephen, and we determined his personal profile and his ICE, his ideal conditions of employment. We then developed some vocational themes that we thought would fit him well. We determined that he really enjoyed repetitive tasks, being in a somewhat social environment, and that he needed a support network around him. He is an individual living with Down syndrome and also is deaf, so speaks exclusively using ASL. And we knew that it would be really important to have natural supports available for him. We then moved on to identify. So we started the job development phase and sought out inclusive employers. We landed on Shoppers Drug Mart, which is an amazingly inclusive company, and they were really willing to carve a position out of their traditional roles. So we got creative, we looked at the tasks that were needed around the store, and we kind of developed a tailored role just for Stephen. So as you can see in the first photo, right in front of him where the egg cartons usually would go, it's quite empty. So this Shoppers Drug Mart, for some reason, the eggs flew off the shelves. They were always kind of in this state where it was very empty and customers had to reach all the way back to try to get a carton of eggs. Myself and the manager established that Stephen would be needed twice a week for 4 hours at a time just to stock eggs. So once he was hired, job coaching began, and we used a multitude of tools to successfully teach Stephen his tasks. The use of modeling, instructional booklets, and natural supports were critical to win the roles he needed. The third box here on the screen is an example of one piece of his instructional booklet. He had many in his pocket, and he could just reach out and grab it at ease. So it says, "Can you help me?" as well as the ASL symbol for help. And then below it says yes, no, or later. A coworker or manager could just tap whichever one to give him the correct answer. This was really critical in kind of coworker communications for Stephen. Stephen has now been at this job for over a year and is successfully expanding his skills. He still does the egg stocking, but he also stocks many other merchandise as well. Since starting, he has never been late to a shift and never missed a shift as well without extensive notice. This is a huge win for inclusive employment. I'll pass it back over to Michael to share about job coaching now.
All right, thank you, Olivia, for that great example. So yeah, what exactly is job coaching? It is systematic instruction to the employer and employee to ensure success on the job. We often utilize technical support so the individual is well supported in their job. We use task analysis instructional support, visual high or low tech adaptations and accommodations, positive behavior support, social inclusion awareness, and training and alternative communication systems. Job coaching is usually for 2 to 3 weeks on the worksite, but it is length based on the employees and employers' needs, so it can be as long as is needed. We will review employers' business policies and procedures with the focus individual. We'll also make any adaptations required for the completion of job duties. Lastly, we provide transportation training for various modes of transportation. All right, so what is a job accommodation? It is reasonable adjustment to workplace duties. It is reasonable changes to the work environment. And it is important to note that accommodations are not luxuries. They simply support the employee with being able to successfully complete their job. And not all individuals with diverse abilities will need job accommodation. And accommodations are not nearly as extensive or expensive as you may think. It could be as simple as flexible working days and hours, or increasing the amount of visuals around your workplace. And this not only benefits the individual, but it can help customers too. Over 2/3 of job accommodations cost under $500, and many cost nothing at all. And finally, you may be eligible for benefits or credits and third-party agency support. And just to go into more detail, the most frequent accommodation that we see that is hugely beneficial for many of the individuals we support is flexible scheduling. For many, being able to start slow and build up their capacity for hours is invaluable and can really support them in being successful on the job. Accommodations have more to do with being flexible, creative, and understanding rather than expensive modifications or specialized equipment. However, even accommodations like ramps, automatic doors, and having accessible washrooms can be very beneficial to customers and make for less cumbersome environments.
Thank you, Michael. I would love to now introduce our guest speaker, Alexander Magnussen. Please take it away, Alexander.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So 17 years ago, I was a client of CBI, and now I actually work for CBI. I am one of the new customized employment staff. So I was a professional public speaker, and I spoke on what it's like to have autism. And I don't actually work for CLBC anymore. It's an old slide.
Fantastic, Alexander. Do you mind explaining just a little bit about where you grew up and also what you like to do in your day-to-day?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, just where you grew up, maybe in a little bit of your day-to-day lifestyle.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So I grew up on the island, and I lived on a hobby farm, and it was fantastic. I had goats, I had chickens, I had ducks, I had geese, a bunch of dogs, a bunch of cats, and all sorts of stuff like that. And it was really cool because CBI came to my house, like I said, 17 years ago. So it was really cool because they talked a lot about what my strengths were, and which was very new to me because usually it's professionals coming over and saying, okay, this is what's wrong, and this is what he's doing wrong, and this is how you can make it right, and all of that stuff. So in this case, it was great because it was all about my strengths and what I was really good at and what I really liked to do and all that kind of stuff. So it really put a spin on anything that I was used to. It was, yeah, it was, so, and now the two people that came over to my house 17 years ago actually still work with CBI, so it's very nice to see them again.
Awesome, thank you.
And yes, so advocating for accommodations. This can often be very difficult and a little bit definitely stressful as well. So how to ask for accommodations. So one of my jobs was working at the vineyard, and one of my accommodations was 3 pictures of a good apple, a not so good apple, and a bad apple. And there was so 3 buckets where you had to organize which apples go where. So the pictures were very helpful to remember, to make sure that which apples go in which carton. And it was really cool, because as I was there longer and longer, I got more responsibilities and stuff like that, and I got to feed and brush the horses and bring them into the paddock and stuff like that. So that was also cool. And some of the things that didn't work was I worked at a bottle depot, and for me, I'm very sensitive to sound, touch, and smell, and sound, touch, and smell, and hearing. Sorry, hearing as well. And so it was very hard because it was very loud, and it was very dirty, and like the tactile was very not pleasant for me. And I did get gloves, but I don't really like the feeling of gloves on my hands anyways. So it was basically the worst job of that you could probably think of that I would do. So it lasted 1.5 days, and it was very stressful to advocate for what I wanted, which was to quit, because it just wasn't working for me. And so the barriers that somebody might face, and I've faced a couple of barriers as well. I think everyone has faced a couple of barriers with advocating in some capacity. So what are the barriers? Maybe not believing your needs. Like for me, my sense of hearing is super, super acute. So people would often say, "Oh, that's not that loud," and really, it's like really loud for me. An invisible disability. Autism doesn't really have like a face to the disability, so for me, it's not like I look like I have autism. It's just, there's right? So, and then minimizing your request is, maybe it's like, oh, well, it's actually, is that really important? Is that a real accommodation? And then again, that goes hand in hand of being judged. And nobody wants to be judged, especially in a negative light.
Yeah, that would be terrible. I have one question as well. I mean, I can imagine it's very frustrating, people not believing your request for help. How do you manage that? How do you let yourself kind of react to people not believing your requests?
Well, you definitely have that little voice in your head where it's like, okay, is this legit? Is this a really big, a really request? And then if you're making the request and you feel like you need to make the request because it is important, you got to advocate for yourself and say, actually it is. And the next time or the next person that comes along, advocate. And if they don't listen, go to the next person and then the next person. And then eventually somebody will be like, oh yeah, you know what? You're right. I am so sorry. And be able to help, whether it's an accommodation or fear of being judged or anything like that. People can help with all sorts of stuff like that.
Thank you so much. I'm sure a lot of people will have questions for Alexander. He'll be here at the end during the Q&A as well. So please save questions for him there as well. Now we're going to move on. You're welcome. Now we're going to move on to some instructional supports and examples of instructional support. So I'll hand it over to Antonella.
Thank you very much, Olivia, and thank you very much, Alexander. It was wonderful to have you join us again and wonderful for you to share your firsthand accounts with us. I think it's very important that we all be listening with open ears, and I think that really speaks to what Michael mentioned earlier in our webinar about accommodations not being luxuries, right? And that everybody has the right to reasonable accommodations. So now I'm going to be touching on instructional supports. And what is an instructional support? So an instructional support is a systematic approach to teaching individuals new skills in a way that best supports their learning. So we're going to be showing you some real life examples of instructional supports that we have made and used on job sites with some of the individuals that we support. Wonderful. So the first example that we have here, this was a young man that also worked at Shoppers Drug Mart. What a wonderfully inclusive employer. This was at a different location for a different position that was also a carved position. So what he did was he threw out garbage, he sorted recycling, he flattened the cardboard, he did sweeping, he cleaned the windows, and there was other general cleaning. And he did that for 4 times a day for about 2 hours in the early morning. And this was very, very helpful for this location as they just had obscene amounts of cardboard that the employees could just never get on top of just because there's so much of it. And these supports here was a booklet that I had created for him. It was on a ring so he could hook it onto it nearby his workstation or keep it on his person. And it was laminated. He also had a pen that works on laminated paper. And then at the end of his shift, he could just wipe it clean and reuse it for his next shift. And these were just all the various steps that were included in his job duties. And so he had space where he can check off that he had done all the things just to ensure that he was keeping up with all of the steps included in his job duties. So just as a few examples from the booklet, you can see the sign-in sheet there. He needed to get his equipment ready, of course. And then there was on the far right-hand side, you can see a list of the different duties that he needed to check off and complete before he could go and take a break. And this was really helpful for him to kind of stay on top of all of his job duties. This right here is a contingency map. So this was also for the same young man at that position. And contingency mapping is something that we use when we want to showcase and highlight what sort of trajectory different behaviors take. So as you can see here, when he's sorting the cardboard, he has 2 different pathways, right? So if you follow the bottom one on with the red arrows, you can see that if he rips on the perforated lines of the cardboard, this was something that he could spend a lot of time doing because I think we can all empathize with just how satisfying that is to rip on those lines. He could do that for quite a long time. So what we wanted to do was just highlight and showcase that if he did spend a long time doing that, he might not get around to completing as much during his shift as he could have if he spent less time doing that. And that really detracted from what was the main motivating factor for him in this position, was that what he liked about this job was the fact that he felt like he was doing something to help the environment. That was something that was a huge passion for him. He was a huge environmentalist. And he also really liked to help people, and he felt like he was really helping his coworkers by being able to sort of take these tasks off their plates. So we just highlighted that. And then if you follow the green pathway up at the top, it showcases, that if he spends less time doing that, and he just simply flattens the cardboard and throws it into the correct bin, he will be doing more of his part to help the environment and help his coworkers, which was really motivating for him. And we highlighted this visually and textually, of course, as you can see here. And this was pinned up near his workstation, so in the recycling room, and served as a really, really good visual reminder, and it was incredibly effective. Okay, these supports are quite similar to the first ones that we had created, but this is a good example of how supports can be made for multiple individuals. So we were supporting a ton of new hires at our local Cineplex, again, an incredibly inclusive employer. And yeah, this was very petite, very small. It fit definitely in the palm of your hand. And it was also laminated and on a ring, and they chose the individuals who were supporting chose to carry them in different ways. Some wanted to put them in a fanny pack, some kept them on their belt loops, some put them in their pockets. And this was incredibly helpful. So this encompassed a wide variety of their job duties. We have a few in the bottom right-hand corner. There's some scripts available for if a guest came up to them and asked a question that perhaps they didn't know the answer to. There was also, just above that, you can see there's a little guide where all the theaters located. Are they on the right or are they on the left? What do you do when you're up on the podium, right? How do you ticket take, that sort of thing. And there's also up in the top left-hand corner, you can see the various job duties that they needed to complete when they were doing their theater checks and cleanings in between shows. And there's also different sort of what-if scenarios, right? Like what happens if you can't, if the computer's not working when you go to sign in for your shift? Who do you go to for that, right? What's your plan A? What's your plan B? That sort of thing. And it really, really did help them with being able to problem solve independently on the job and be able to complete all the different duties. Because when you break it down like this, as you can see, right, that these jobs, they do have a lot of duties. There is a lot of things that you need to remember throughout your shift, right? And we use this to help foster independence for a variety of individuals. And the nice thing was is that it worked very well for all of them in different ways. And they all have various different learning styles. That was great. Okay, so this support here was a transit support that I created. So this was for a man who needed to take public transit in order to get to work. This was pocket-sized. It could easily fit into his wallet. There was also a corresponding backside that had an emergency contact card. It had my information on it, that his family's information on it. And this was just a way to make sure that he had a constant reminder on his person, right, both textually and visually, of what buses he needed to get on, what stops he needed to get on and off at. And I think it really helps with the reminder piece, but also for peace of mind for the family as well, which is also very important in this process. Okay, here we have more instructional supports, again, for that same man that I created the transit support for. So he was working in a warehouse environment where he was doing a lot of folding and packaging of clothing, and he had a workstation, a tabletop, and these supports were taped to that tabletop, so they were always readily available to him. As you can see, there was a break card. When do you take your break, at what time, from which time to which time, just serves as a reminder there. There was also a couple of short statements that he could say in various scenarios, as you can see, right? What can you say and to who? When you're done, when you need more supplies, right? When you've completed a task, sort of what now situation. And then there at the bottom, sometimes he needed to be able to sort the stuff that he was packaging from smallest to largest or largest to smallest. But being in a warehouse environment, there's so many sizes. They ranged all the way from extra, extra, extra small to extra, extra, extra large. This visual was a great reminder for him as to which order do they go in and how do they fit into that order. Yeah. And this was more so a support for myself in this situation. Sometimes the folding techniques had to be very specific in order to fit into the packaging that they were putting it into. And so there was lots and lots of steps that needed to be completed in order to do that properly. So for myself, I created this forward chaining data sheet where I could make sure that we were kind of on track with ensuring that he was able to do each of the steps independently before we moved on to the next step or on to a different task. So this is just a very small portion of it, steps 1 to 4, but there were lots of different steps. Okay, and here's a good example of instructional supports for someone with a very different learning style. So that's something that I think is really important to keep in mind with instructional supports, is that we spend a lot of time getting to know the individuals that we are supporting long before we get to the job coaching phase. And so it's very, very helpful having that knowledge when we're creating these supports, so that they are very individualized to the person's learning style and are actually able to support them with being independent on the job. So this was a young man who works at Walmart. He is in a recovery position, so he does a lot of recovery of merchandise from the customer service kiosk. He does customer interaction and customer service, helping people find what they need, facing product, all sorts of different stuff. And these are a couple of examples of supports that we created for him. In the top left-hand side there, you can see this is half, so the right-hand side of his Walmart location that he worked at. What is the floor plan? What's the layout? Because he's doing recovery of merchandise, he needs to be very familiar with the floor plan in order to be able to put the merchandise back where it needs to go. So there's also a corresponding left-hand side. If you put them together like this, you'd be able to see the whole store layout. And it also includes actual pictures of the actual signage in his store location. And this was just served as a very helpful reminder, and so that he didn't always need to be asking his coworkers or his managers where to find certain things. He could just pull it out. And then in the bottom right, you can see this was a support that we created for the paging system. So you know, you go on the phone and use the intercom. As you can see in the picture, it highlights all the different codes that he needs, so he can see all of those. And then all the different steps in how to use the intercom, and also just scripts of standards for what he can say when he's using it. Because for this young man, the biggest problem was that he just felt pretty anxious about being able to have everybody hear his voice over the intercom. So this is more so for that rather than for the actual step-by-step of using it.
All
Okay,
right,
and now I'm going to pass it on to Olivia.
thank you. This is our last instructional support example, and it's for an individual who worked as a dishwasher at a catering company. They had 3 different sized hotel bedpans, small, medium, and large. And as you can see, the depth is different in each one, but the dimensions are the same in each one. So it was really challenging when they were stacked up to tell the difference. I'll show you an example of them stacked up. As you can see here, they look virtually identical, just a little bit different in width. So the pictures behind this picture, I made bigger, laminated them, and put them underneath each column, small, medium, and large. And this was super helpful for him, but not only him, but for his coworkers as well. They were really excited about this visual because it was an instant small, medium, and large, and they can know exactly where to put the clean pan once it was done being washed. This saved the company a lot of time, and it also supported the focus individual, my client. So it was a win-win for the employer and the employees as well. I'll now pass it over to Michael to wrap us up and speak to the benefits of instructional supports.
All right, thank you, Olivia and Antonella. Really great examples. So yeah, we're just going to talk about the benefits of instructional support. So the first one, it is personalized to fit the person's needs. This is very important. Here at CBI, we're very person-centered. If an individual is a very visual learner, then we'll provide a lot of pictures. If they prefer task analysis, then we'll have that. They can also be compact or discrete or embedded into clothing or workstations. Their universal supports can be beneficial for existing employees or future employees during the onboarding process, both with and without diverse abilities. It fosters independence in the workplace. It can be used both for job duties and to encourage and support social interaction with customers, coworkers, management, and so on. It also supports the job coach being able to fade on-site support. This one's really important because we can't be on-site all the time and forever. And the goal is to fade out eventually, and this really helps that process. Instructional supports can be temporary during the learning process or a more long-term staple. And it supports management's understanding of individual needs long after the job coach has left the physical site. And lastly, it boosts confidence.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for showcasing some of those benefits. We're now going to show you a video of an individual who went through the entire customized employment process, from discovery all the way to being faded out of our job coaching support. So let me bring that up for you guys. All right, so here is our part of our CBI website, and it's our success stories page. So you're welcome to check this out after the webinar is done too, if you would like some more information. Here's Richie, a young man who received service. Oh. Sorry, I'm hearing that the sound isn't working. One moment. There we go. All right, here's Richie.
I like to help others. I use that gut training and the boss myself. I'm more confident. I make a lot of friends. I do Xbox and washing dishes, laundry, and working out.
My name is Victor. I've been working for White Spot for 14 years, and I've been pleasure to work with Richie the last 4 years. And I usually always say to him, my buddy Richie. He's one of a good guy. He's a hard worker. At first, he was a little shy, and then now he opened up because I talked to him. I told him to express how he feels and to work hard, and he says he loves working here, he enjoys working with me, and I always said to him, he's my brother from a different mother, and yeah, I love working with him. He's awesome. I'm glad he's here, and I'm glad he's opened up and he's comfortable, and I always make him a drink in the morning, and he always wants a drink, and I always bug him that you're gonna get a small one. He always says to me, come on. He always wants the big one, so yeah, it's awesome working with him, and yeah, that's all I can say about him.
I'm Sarah McCain. I'm the general manager here at Oak Ridge White Spot. I've been here for about 3 years, and I've been with White Spot for 10 years, so quite some time. And I've been working with Richie for the whole time that I've been at Oak Ridge here. When I first met Richie, he was a little bit on the shy side. He really seemed to love White Spot, and he was really happy to be here. You know, really fond of a couple of the employees. And throughout the time that he's been here, it's been amazing to see him grow and see him develop those interpersonal skills and have more relationships with myself and with the other staff members, and even see him open up and show his personality to guests as well. So when he first started, if a guest asked him a question, he'd sort of be a little intimidated about it and not sure how to respond, and then get somebody else, and now he's able to be like, oh, let me get someone to help you with that. So it's been amazing to see him sort of grow and develop both his professional and sort of his personal skills as well. So when he's at work, he's working mostly in a busser role, so that means that he's looking to see which tables have dishes and items that need to be cleared off of them. So he takes initiative to notice them and go over and clean everything off and wipe the tables and get them ready for the guests to come the next time. And he also looks to see if there's other things that he can do to help. So if there's other people who are carrying dishes and there's nothing to do, he'll ask, oh, I can take those, and he'll take them to the back, or he'll go around and look for menus so that he can bring them to the front. So quite often I'm at the front desk, so he always likes to bring me the menu as presents. His attitude is really great, so he's always willing to help, or you know, anything that needs to be done, he's just going to jump in and do it. His attendance is really good. He's very punctual, comes before his shifts to say hi to everybody and then get ready and go on the floor there, and yeah, he really seems to enjoy it. So it's, like I said, the teamwork aspect and seeing him interact with the other employees, and you know, even the smile on his face when he's enjoying doing his job. Our guests really like to see that as well. You know, we get lots of comments about how it's really great that we have an inclusive work environment, and people are really happy to see that, you know, we're willing to, you know, give someone a chance and have them be embraced as a part of our team. For morale, I know that like our staff members are really happy that, you know, we care about people, and it's not like we're just looking for, you know, someone who meets this list of requirements, that we care about everybody and that we're willing to give people chances and have them be a part of a team. So I think it really helps in terms of staff morale that way as well. And particularly in our business where it's hospitality and we have lots of people coming in on a regular basis, they really like to see that we, you know, care about, you know, making a difference and having people on our staff who, you know, might have different challenges but are still able to do a job and, you know, be a part of the team. People respond very well to it. We have a guest feedback program where people can fill out surveys, and we very consistently get wows for, you know, oh, it's really great to see that, you know, White Spot cares about people and that they are willing to give, you know, employment to people who might have some challenges, you know, and they're able to have them be a part of their team. The most important thing is if you have an expectation, you need to be able to explain why, so that you can relate it to something that makes sense to him. But beyond that, you know, he's just really happy to be here, and he does a, you know, really good job. I think that there's certainly, I've seen a lot of progression in terms of his confidence and his abilities, his interpersonal skills, all of those things since he started. So there, you know, who knows what the future holds. I think that there's definitely opportunities for him. You know, if he's motivated and he wants to do that, I think that he could really do anything that he puts his mind to. He just would need the proper support to explain why things are important. And I know that sometimes illustrations help, you know, so like this is what happens, and you explain things in a visual way as well, or role playing. So you know, I think that as long as we're utilizing those methods and their support, absolutely, you know, he could move more into, you know, the greeting and seating and that sort of thing as well. There's definitely opportunities there. So to other prospective employers of people who might have challenges or disabilities, I would really encourage you to look and see if there's roles that you could have them fit in your business, because as I had mentioned previously, today's society is looking for businesses that really care, and it's amazing for your staff morale as well as for recognition with your clients or your customers. And it's really great to be a part of seeing someone grow and develop and making a difference in their life as well. So I'd highly recommend it. There's lots of really great people out there who would be a great part of your team, and everybody can work.
Awesome. I love that video of Richie. It really showcases how there can be great success with customized employment. And he's actually been working there for 7 years now, so still loving it at White Spot. All right. So we're just wrapping up here. Here are some of CBI's resources. Check out our website if you do want to see more of those success stories, more about upcoming webinars like this one, or this webinar will be recorded. So if you ever want to refer back to it, it will be on our website as well. And if we don't get to all the questions to that Q&A, our email is info@cbiconsultants.com, and feel free to reach out and send more questions there. And also we have a Facebook page, which is super fun. We post lots of videos and also like to keep you updated there about webinars and stuff like that too. So thank you guys for tuning in. It's been a pleasure to share some stories with you guys and some tools that have been successful for us. We'll now move on to the Q&A portion. So please feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A function, and we'll be happy to answer them. Alexander is also still here, so he will be happy to answer any questions as well. All right. A few minutes here. All right, I have one here. How do you assess what kind of support should be utilized? That's a really good question. I guess maybe all 3, 4 of us should answer and kind of say how we do it a little bit differently.
Sure, I'll touch on that first,
Sure.
because a lot of the instructional supports that we focus on today were ones that I had created for individuals that I'm supporting, so I can speak to my process, and then Olivia and Michael and Alexander can feel free to add. But yeah, as I mentioned, we spend a lot of time getting to know our focus individuals, the people that we're supporting, in the discovery phase, which is in the first phase, as Michael touched on earlier in our webinar. And we really spend a lot of time getting to know the person, spending time with them, speaking to family, friends, other professionals that they've worked with, to get a better sense of who this person is, what are they like, what are their strengths, right? And what's their learning style. Most importantly, that's a really, really big portion of it as it relates to the instructional supports. And at the end of the day, we come up with a document that we call a vocational profile. And that is a really great summary of all these amazing things that we've learned about this person. It kind of culminates into what we call our ideal conditions of employment, right? So what is this person's ICE, right? Where are they best suited for? What can we do to help support them with that? And the vocational profile is something that I look back on quite frequently throughout the whole process, but especially when we get to the job coaching phase, where I am thinking, okay, we've got a job now, we've got a placement, I know what the job duties are, right? What can I do to help support this person? And then I'll go back and I'll take a look, right? What are some of the things that we learned from the get-go, right? And then the important thing about the instructional supports as well is being able to be flexible, right? And adapt. So if something that I've created to try and help support somebody isn't working, right? Okay, scratch that, we'll try something different. And I think that's a very important to me. So yeah, that's a little bit of the process of sort of how we get to the point of creating those wonderful supports that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, it's a really excellent question. I think, as Antonella mentioned, it's just being super person-centered and really making sure that you're looking at the individual and what the individual wants. If they want something super discreet, making sure that it's small and that it's just kind of for them. So like Antonella really touched on, it's very person-centered. Yeah. Great question.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to that, but I think it's just really stressed on what their learning style is and just making sure that you keep up with that. And then I also really like what Antonella said. If something doesn't work, that's okay. Just scratch it, come up with something new. And it's just constantly being flexible and just really accommodating the individual and doing what's best for them.
Alexander, do you want to touch on your experience at all?
My lack of experience, yes. I'm very new at being a customized employment specialist, and I will, again, with the ideal employment, the ICE is definitely very important, getting to know the person and really knowing their strengths, knowing what we need to work on, but also really highlighting the strengths, because everyone has like such individual wonderful strengths that we can use in a lot of different ways.
Awesome point. Yeah. All right, we have another question here. It says, do you have any tips or advice on making job supports? That's a really good question as well. Similar to the one we just asked, but I assume this is more in relation to the physical task of creating supports. Antonella, did you want to take this one away again?
Sure. So yeah, my advice would be, only make something if it's really necessary. That's sort of the first thing. Is sort of my process is we're very involved in the whole, usually when you start a new job, you have an onboarding process. And I think that's sort of like my big sort of brainstorm opportunity is during that onboarding process, because you really get to see from start to finish, what is the job going to entail. I also really like doing sort of like trial shifts, that sort of thing, because it gives me time to sort of prepare and have that time to get creative and brainstorm a little bit. As Alexander mentioned, focus on the person's strengths, right? Like, what are they really, really great at? Like, how can we utilize these strengths to circumvent some of the challenges or some of the barriers that might be coming up? And then, pull in natural supports, right? Like, who would this person be going to, if I wasn't here, right? Who is the natural support in this environment, whether that's more coworkers or managers, right? Make sure to utilize those natural supports, definitely, and also showcase the instructional supports to the natural supports, so that we're not, that the focus person doesn't need to necessarily rely on us being the only ones that are familiar with these supports, right? That the other people in the work environment are also familiar. And I think Stephen was a really great example of that, right? We weren't the ones that were using the booklet with Stephen. It was his managers and his coworkers that were using the booklet with Stephen, right? And another thing too is to sort of try to just get creative, right? What are we trying to accomplish here? Like, what's the end goal and how are we going to get there? Is that a task analysis, right? Is that a step-by-step breakdown? Does this person learn textually? Do they learn visually? Do they learn by just having it spoken, right? Spoken instruction? Do they do well with role play, right? All sorts of different ways to go about teaching, right? And being very systematic about it. So.
Fantastic, thank you. We have more of a comment here. Just wanted to say that was a great webinar and keep up the amazing work. Thank you. That was an anonymous attendee. Thank you so much. And then we also have another one saying, I want to thank you so very much on this excellent webinar. I'm a CLBC home share provider, finding this very helpful to implement with my guy at home. Have many ideas from this. No questions, sorry, Lol, but thank you again. You're welcome. We're glad it's helpful. All right, we have one directed at Alexander. What are some supports that you have used in your working career to allow you to achieve your employment goals?
Well, I definitely have, when I was working at the vineyard and stuff like that, I had my employment specialist that was very informative, and also she really knew me, so that was really good, and she knew my strengths of what I could do. And then it was with the goal with the job I have now, I rely, I don't have any, like, I don't have a employment specialist for me, because now I'm the employment specialist, so that's a bit different, but I definitely rely on my coworkers, I guess you could say, i.e. natural supports, so I rely heavily on them, and it is, I'm just really excited to start my career as an employment specialist, and it's very different and it's very interesting that I know both sides of it, so I hope that I can bring a unique perspective and it really be a positive, and thank you.
Yeah, that's so awesome that you've experienced both sides. And I think earlier you mentioned a little bit about a visual your job coach provided for you about 3 different types of apples.
Yes, for a job for an employment specialist, there is no visual supports that I've seen yet.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's all right.
Oh, no, it's perfect. All right, we have another question here. It says, do you have any tips on finding inclusive employers? Excellent question. Yeah, this one's very challenging because not every employer is going to be an inclusive employer. We've been finding many lately, which is fantastic. The real trick, I think, is going to talk to employers in person. Obviously, with current conditions, it's not as feasible. But that's how a lot of the inclusive employers I've found have occurred. I've gone out into the community that the client is looking for, talked face-to-face, kind of explained what inclusive employment is and what customized employment is. And just having a really frank conversation with them. Sometimes I'll actually bring the individual looking for jobs as well, so they can speak to why they really want to work, which is super motivating. Having a person come into your business and say how much they are passionate about finding work, I think has been really crucial in finding those champion inclusive employers. Do you guys want to speak to that a little bit as well?
Yeah, I think that it's really important to also meet the employers where they're at. I really try to sort of gauge, if an employer is not currently an inclusive employer, why is that, right? Like, what is the barrier here, right? Is it that you're concerned about the justification of costs, right? Is it that you're concerned about onboarding, right? Is it your concern that you're part of a union and how does that work, right? That sort of thing. And sort of figuring out how can we best answer those questions and what sort of education and information can we provide to sort of highlight the benefits of being an inclusive employer, which was exactly what our last webinar was about, which I believe we are still, Michael, do you want to touch on that? Is that recording available on our website or are we still waiting on that one?
Yeah, we're working on it and should be posted soon. And then, yeah, just to add to your comments, I think it's just really fostering that relationship with the employer. I really like to stress that it's a win-win for both the individual and the employer. We're not just trying to get individuals a job and just leave them there and just, go on our way. We're really going to work with the employer, support them, and make sure it's a benefit also to their business. And I think that's really important, really, for employers to consider inclusive employment.
Absolutely. Looks like we have one question here. It says, job coach now with COVID, any suggestions? I'm assuming this doesn't mean this person asking has COVID. I'm assuming it means how are we managing job coaching during COVID, which is, yeah, it is challenging. So what we're doing is implementing a lot of policies for CBI about safety. Antonella, you're part of this COVID committee. Would you like to speak to that as well?
Sure, yeah. I'll touch on, so actually I'll just mention an experience that I had right at the start of COVID when we first were sort of locking down, I guess you can say. I actually tried to find someone, I was in the process of job coaching somebody at the time, and we tried to get creative and find ways to do job coaching remotely. So like I set up Zoom meetings with the person I was supporting, like right before their shift started and for right after their shift started, so that we had opportunities to talk about what had happened during the shift. And that worked for that individual. But for somebody who needs more intensive on-site job coaching, we have developed protocols and safety measures and policies that we have in place to help support us. And a lot of businesses also have those themselves, of course, right, in order to be up and running and functioning at this time. So I think, yeah, between the safety policies of the business enterprise that we would be in, and then our own safety policies, we have a bunch of measures in place that, should somebody require more intensive on-site job coaching, we now sort of know what to expect going into that. Yeah.
Yes, fantastic. And that looks like that's it for questions. And also we're at the end of the time, so that's perfect. Someone else commented, thank you guys. I enjoyed this and it was really helpful. That's fantastic to hear. Thank you so much. And again, if you guys are looking for more information, feel free to email us info@cbiconsultants.com. Check out our website. We have our webinars there posted as well. And we all want to thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.